Romans 8 is part of a letter written by the Apostle Paul to the church in Rome. In this chapter, Paul addresses the struggles and suffering that Christians face in their lives. At the time, believers were dealing with persecution and hardship, and Paul wanted to offer them hope and encouragement. The chapter talks about the transformative work of the Holy Spirit in believers' lives and the ultimate glory that awaits them in heaven. It is important to understand that Paul was writing to both encourage and strengthen the faith of these early Christians, reminding them that their struggles were not in vain. Romans 8 verse 28 is a promise that God is always working for the good of those who love Him, no matter what circumstances they face. This verse does not mean that everything in life will be easy or that believers won't face hardships. Instead, it means that God can use even the most difficult and painful situations for a greater good. This greater good, however, is not always what we expect or even desire in the moment. It may involve spiritual growth, a deepening relationship with God, or the fulfillment of His purpose in ways we cannot immediately see. The key part of the verse is, "To them that love God, and to them who are the called according to His purpose." This tells us that this promise is specifically for believers, those who have a relationship with God and are walking in His will. The phrase "work together" suggests a process, indicating that God is not just reacting to our circumstances but actively orchestrating events in our lives for a divine purpose. To fully appreciate the depth of this verse, we need to understand that God's definition of good may not always align with our human understanding. We often think of good in terms of comfort, success, or happiness. However, God's primary goal is to conform us to the image of His Son, Jesus Christ. That process sometimes requires hardship, discipline, or challenges. The ultimate good is not about making our lives easier but about making us more like Christ and fulfilling God's eternal purposes. In times of suffering or confusion, we might wonder how anything good could come from our situation. But this verse reminds us to trust in God's wisdom and timing. He sees the bigger picture, while we only see a small piece of the puzzle. Trusting in this promise requires faith that God's ways are higher than ours, and His purpose is always good, even when we don't understand. So how can we apply Romans 8 verse 28 to our daily lives? First, this verse calls us to trust in God's plan, especially when things aren't going the way we had hoped. We must learn to let go of our desire to control every outcome and instead surrender our lives to God's will. When we face difficult circumstances, whether it be sickness, financial struggles, relationship issues, or any other challenge, we can take comfort in knowing that God is at work. Even when things seem bleak, He is weaving all things together for our ultimate good. Secondly, this verse reminds us to remain faithful in our love for God. The promise of Romans 8 verse 28 is for those who love Him, which implies a close, ongoing relationship with God. It's not about a passive belief but about actively seeking Him, spending time in prayer, reading His Word, and living in obedience to His commands. As we grow in our love for God, our trust in His plan deepens, and we are better able to see how He is working in our lives. Finally, this verse encourages us to live with purpose. We are called according to God's purpose, which means that our lives have meaning and direction. We are not aimlessly wandering through life. Rather, we are part of God's grand plan. This understanding gives us hope and motivation, knowing that our struggles and successes are all part of something greater than ourselves. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with others, and leave a comment below if this message spoke to you. May God bless you and continue working all things together for your good.